You would think with regard to the new rules, because they qualify at a level which is much higher than the actual, the 5-year discounted fixed by almost usually 1.5% to 2%, that it would actually limit the borrowing capacity. So theoretically, you're actually getting people smaller mortgages. I think in a sense, that probably is going to act, to your point about the actual rising debts, it's actually going to provide people with lower loan to values in a sense, or not getting as big of a house with that. So I think that's actually probably
bite off more than they chew.
So because to offset the main reason why they did that was consumer debt. Consumer debt was getting too over the top. So
everyone picks on housing. They should pick on credit cards and
credit cards and lines of credit. Yes, unsecured lines of credit. Yeah.
So Ben, the myth question is that international investing will always buoy Toronto, and we say buoy in Toronto. Not, I don't know what you said in Owen style. Buoy. Boy. Yes, we say buoy in Toronto. And just so the folks know, you are from Owen Sound, so right. Yes, and you would be an expert on international investing because of that. But
of course. Yeah.
So international investing, is it going to drive the Toronto market like it's maybe doing in Vancouver?
Yeah, well, I think that there've been a couple interesting reports in the last few weeks examining that exact question, and very, very conflicting results in terms of just how much the market's being driven by foreign investors. There's a couple points that I would raise. One is that you can't have the story of foreign buyers showing up buying with cash and somehow reconcile that with growing mortgage debt relative to incomes and GDP. When you look at that, on aggregate, those numbers don't match up.
But it's driving up prices, which may force people out of the market
to take more debt to keep up,
yes.
Which is the concern. Right?
Yes.
And that's my point, is that if in fact it's doing anything, it's probably forcing more people to take on more debt, which is a concern. Right? But in reality, if these people were actually buying with cash, that should show up on the aggregate debt levels. The second point I'd make on that, if you look at OSFI, so basically the biggest financial regulator in the country, has just announced that they're actually going to look into that exact question, just how much foreign demand is driving real estate.
Yes.
And just last week, it wasn't OSFI, but it was Immigration Canada announced a cap on their immigrant investor program, which allows people with $1.6 million in net worth to basically fast track to become permanent citizens. Now, that's been capped at almost 80% less than what it's averaged over the last 5 years. What that signals to me is that the regulators are well aware of the potential risks of having a number of foreign investors driving up prices beyond the capacity of locals to buy it.
Yes.
And they're not only aware of that, but they're also very willing to act. And so I think anyone who would step in, take on a great deal of leverage to try to keep up out of fear that the market's going to get away from them, that's a very dangerous game to play, because the government's made it very clear that they will restrict that if they need to.
Excellent point. Ben, the myth question that we want you to bust or not bust is that we have a green belt and population growth into the GTA is going to continue to be huge, and this will always cause real estate, or I guess for the next few years, real estate prices to continue to go up. Ben, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, that may not necessarily be true. The Green Belt obviously restricts areas that have typically been low-rise or ground-oriented housing. So, what's driving the market now, as you can see in some of the numbers, that high-rise condominiums or condominium tenured developments, a number of units that are selling per year are outpacing low-rise homes. So. As you can see, like I mentioned earlier, we have potential for 9,000 new units being added just in a single quarter, right? So because we're putting this supply on the market, it may potentially keep prices in check. It may not see it out there, but really recently pricing hasn't been too aggressive at some of these new project launches.
Excellent point. And something about the population numbers always kind of troubled me, because I know between census is in Toronto we have less than 2% growth, and I checked the numbers. We average about in the Toronto 416 we average about 20,000 new people a year, and that's taking account immigration, but also people moving away. So with that, Ben, are we maybe slightly producing a little bit too much condos, because most of the condos are in the 416 because of that?
Yeah, but the reason, the thing is the people from the suburbs are moving into the city. The young people that have grown up in Brampton, that have grown up in Mississauga, that have grown up in Newmarket, Aurora, they're coming to Toronto, they're coming to North York, they're coming to Markham to buy condominiums, and they're choosing that lifestyle as opposed to buying that that low-rise detached house as a single person. As a single person, they may not need that, and they want the lifestyle and the maintenance-free features that condominium adds. So that's why we're not seeing the same level of growth in condominiums in markets like Brampton and markets like Oakville and Burlington, where you think that there would be based off of the price of low-rise housing and the population increases in those areas. So people want to be downtown, and people want to be in this area, and the population numbers can be skewed a bit by people not having as many kids and older people living longer and staying in their house longer. So it's not always an exact clear picture of what's happening out there.
And thank you very much. And Don, I actually want to get your perspective on the foreign investing, because you have some experience. You know some folks in Ireland and Australia where you've seen some of this heavy foreign investment happen. What's your thoughts on foreign investment coming from looking at Toronto from Vancouver?
Well, I'm blessed to be able to travel the world to talk about real estate, et cetera, and then talk to different groups and economists from around the world. And what they're telling me is that Canada has become the safe haven. Now, that's not just for real estate. We've got food, fuel, fertilizer, and forestry, the four things that the world is going to require. Toronto itself is obviously the head office to a number of those, and also where the financial transactions occur. So on the world stage right now, this is going to be Canada's economic decade. And so they're planting money in Canada.
Don, I hate to interrupt you. Capital Economics actually reported that commodity prices are expected to go down with the U.S. slowdown and the world slowdown. Are you sure that this foreign investment is going to continue flowing into Canada?
Well, if Capital Economics says it. The reality is that no matter what we talk about, anybody can be right in a window of time. I think that who we're talking to on this show, and you got great guests, by the way. It's an honor to be here, because what we're trying to do here is talk about the next 5 to 10 year window, not the next 30 days or 60 days. And unfortunately, these reports get caught up into a media frenzy and a talking frenzy where, oh my God, tomorrow's the day that the world is going to end and all Toronto condos are going to be worth $7. And the unfortunate thing is that what that does is, if it's done enough people pull out of the market. But let's get back to the foreign investors. Right now they're parking it in our companies, in our oil sands, in our BHP Billiton, all across the country. But also what we're finding, especially from Europe, is they're just coming in and they're buying properties. They don't care if they leave it empty. They just want to protect their money, stick it in a Canadian dollar, knowing that it's not going to go away. Now, that's one thing. Coming from Asia, what we're finding, and this is one of the reasons that you're going to see average prices, why I ignore them, but why they'll see them continue to go up and make great headlines, is because the foreign investors, especially from Asia, are buying the high end of the market. Yes. They're not coming in and buying the 400 square foot walk up, little condo on the fourth floor. The majority, what we're finding, is heading into that higher-end property. Whether they're occupied or not, whether they create cash flow or not, is not a requirement. What they're trying to do is get and park their dough. And then I saw a report come out that says, well, only 0.4% of the transactions were based with a foreign address. And I go, you're making a decision to say that there's no foreign investment based on their foreign address. I don't know about you, but if I'm buying in Ireland or I'm buying in Australia, guess what I'm doing? I'm having a lawyer represent me in those countries, and that would be my registered address for that property.
Absolutely. So it's very hard to track in any case.
It's impossible to track, and you know what? And even if you go down to the lineups for some of the pre-built condo projects in Toronto or Vancouver, you can go and go down and say, oh, wow, there seems to be a lot of, quote, foreign people here.
Yes.
And I've seen people do that when they're actually from Toronto, or they're from Pickering, for crying out loud.
Yes.
So let's not buy into anecdotal. Let's buy into what's real and give the people, the viewers, what's happening over the next 5 to 10 years, because that's how long people hold their property.